So this video will go over a third way to start solving some of these equations for x, right? At the end of the day, what we've been doing so far in this unit, we're just trying to figure out what are the different ways that we can find the values for x that we can plug in. So this is what's called the quadratic formula. And it's this kind of big, ominous looking formula right there. And what you're going to do, you want the opposite of b. See, there's opposite of b plus or minus. We've seen that earlier in the day. That's what's going to give us our two solutions. You do the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So the a, the b, and the c, where do they come from? That comes from our formula being in standard form, right? And we talked about that over the past couple days, doing things in standard form. We wanted it in, we wanted this thing to be in standard form so we could factor and then solve that way. But sometimes you can't factor these things. Right? If we tried to factor some of these, they won't work. So we need another method, right? So if you see 4x squared, for example, let's take a look at that. Well, we'll look at one a little bit simpler than that. If you have this, right? So yesterday we would have said we want x squared plus 4x, and then we'd move the 1 over, plus 1 equals 0. Well, we need factors of 4 that add up to 1. The thing is, there are none. So this can't be factored. So we need another method. So the method that is going to allow us to do this is the quadratic formula, because there's an a, there's a b, and there's a c. So here, the a, the number in front of the x squared, remember that's understood to be a 1. The b here is a 4, and the c is a 1. Look at the previous example. A is 4, b is negative 2, c is 7. So once they're in standard form, it's actually pretty easy to spot all those pieces. So take a second and see if you can figure out the next 4 on your own. Remember, you have to move it into standard form if it's not already there. And I'll give you just a second to do that. So what you could do is you just pause the video very quickly, go through them, and then hit play again, and then see if your answers are right. So here are the answers for 1 and 2. They're already in standard form. Now, when you look at 3 and 4, adjust those, put them into standard form, and then get A, B, and C. So again, pause the video for a moment and see if you could go ahead and do that. And so again, for number 3, you're going to have to move that 5x over, which turns it into minus 5x. Make sure it's in standard form, right, so the 5x gets tucked in. Right? And once you're in standard form, it's just a matter of picking it right out of there, right? We're going to move the 6x over. It's originally positive, so that's why this is negative. This is a negative 7, turns into positive 7. And so once we have it in standard form, it's very, very easy to spot the different parts of this. So how we're going to use the quadratic formula is we want to identify A, B, and C. So take a quick moment. So A equals 1, B equals negative 3, C equals 8. So the quadratic formula, so I don't have to keep sliding up and down to the top, x equals, so what you're looking for, opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c over 2a. So let's just plug and chug. So we want the opposite of b. The opposite of negative 3 is positive 3. Then we want b squared. Negative 3 squared is 9. Minus 4 times 1 times c is 8. And all over 2 times a, here's 1. So now we just start combining some things. 3 plus or minus, we have 9 minus 4 times 1 is 1, times 8 is 32 over 2. And I'm going to bring that up here. Now we have 3 plus or minus 9 minus 32 is negative 23 over 2. And then there's one more thing we can do because there's a negative under the square root. We're going to have our final answer is 3 plus or minus I root 23 over 2. So these answers are going to look kind of big and funky and a little bit awkward sometimes, but that's okay. Right? Again, if you want to see why the quadratic formula is important, try to factor number 2. Right? So we'd need factors of negative 12 that add up to 2, right, if we try our bottoms up method. Can you think of factors of negative 12 that add up 2. Well, factors of 12, 4 and 3. There's no way to get 2. 2 and 6. There's no way to add up to get 2. Even if we start playing with plus and minuses. 1 and 12. There's no way to get that to be 2. This cannot be factored. That's why the quadratic formula, which is right here in red, is very, very helpful. So here a equals 4, b equals 2, c equals negative 3. So here we go. We want opposite b. So we want the opposite of 2, which is negative 2, plus or minus. 2 squared is 4, minus 4 times negative 3 over 2 times 4. So now we have negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 4, and then 4 times 4 is 16, times negative 3 is negative 48, so that's going to turn this into plus 48 over 8. All right, and so now it's just a matter of kind of cleaning this thing up. Let's simplify what we can simplify. So I'll bring it up here. So we have negative 2 plus or minus, well, 4 plus 48 is 52 over 8. And now let's see what we can turn 52. We can pull, I don't really have a lot of room on this sheet. I'll kind of do it below. I'll have to erase it. So 52, we can turn that into 4 times 13. So a 2 and a 2. So I can pull out a 2 and a 13 is left. So if you'll allow me to do this, we now have negative 2 plus or minus 2 root 13 over 8. And now a little bit of work for us. Every one of those pieces, the negative 2, the 2 root 13, and the 8 are all even, which means I can divide each piece by 2. The trick when we're going to fully simplify this is we need to make sure all 3 of those things with the red arrow have the same factor that we can pull out. So all of those can be divided by 2. So in other words, there's one more step that we can do. So negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. We'd have a 1 root 13, and then 8 divided by 2 is 4. So there's my final answer right there for number 2. Number 3, right, it's not in standard form yet, so let's put it in standard form. Right, negative 4x squared. Move the 5x over. We're going to squeeze it in between those two things so it's in standard form. And now we have what we need in order to get a, b, and c. So hey, a here is negative 4, b is negative 5, c is negative 5. All right. Oh, excuse me. Now it's just a matter, let's plug it into our formula. All right, so we have x equals opposite b, so that's 5, plus or minus the square root. Negative 5 squared is 25. 4 times a is negative 4, times c is negative 5, over 2 times negative 4. So again, that's at this point, you just have to combine what you can combine and simplify what we can simplify. So do it one step at a time. 5 plus or minus the square root of 25. So we have 4 times negative 4 times negative 5 is 80. So we have minus 80 over negative 8. Now 5 plus or minus 25 minus 80 is negative 55 over negative 8. And 55 will break down into 5 and 11, but we can't go any further than that. But the one thing we can pull out, we can pull out the I, the 55, over negative 8. Here, you look at the 3 pieces, the 5, an I, and a negative 8. Nothing that we can divide through all of those, so our final answer is right there. Right? And so the last example, again, let's get this into standard form. So x squared, that's a positive 6x, so it turns into minus 6x. That's a negative 7, turn into plus 7, equals 0. So a equals 1, b equals negative 6, c equals 7. So we have x equals opposite b, turns into 6, plus or minus the square root. B squared, negative 6 squared is 36, minus 4 times 1 times 7 over 2 times a, which is 1. Now just work your way through the process. 6 plus or minus 36 minus 4 times 1 is 1 times 7 is 28. over 2. So let's combine the 36 and the 28. 36 minus 28 is 8 over 2. So 8 we can break down. 4 and 2, 2 and 2. So we've got 6 plus or minus 2 square root of 2 over 2. Here's an example now all of a sudden. All three pieces have something that I can divide out. They're all even, which means I can divide them all by 2. So do that. 6 divided by 2 is 3. We're left with 1 square root of 2 over 1. And all these ones, really you have 6 plus or minus square root of 2. You divide by 1, nothing really happens. So your final answer could look like that. And it's cleaned up a lot more than some of those other ones. So if you guys will go on to the next ones, go ahead and give this page a try. And if you pause the video right here, go through those and then check your answers with the answer sheet that's provided.